Super. Hello and welcome everyone to another candid chat today with Katie Jane. And, you know, for the people that have been sitting on social media and seeing some of the information going out about Katie in the last week, you will notice that we've got something really exciting and dynamic planned for you today. What I love most about Katie is the beautiful energy and the high vibration she brings to the space whenever we're having a conversation. Welcome, Katie. If you would like to just give a few words about who you are and your background.
Yes. What a beautiful, introduction. Thank you so much, Taryn. And I am always thrilled to come on and share my experience, share my knowledge, share my energy, because yes, I do have a great energy around this. And coming on today, thank you, Taryn, is an absolute joy. So thank you. Yes, my name is Katie Jane. I'm over here in WA, and you can probably hear my accent. So I've been over here from England longer than I've actually been in England. So I'm 54 this year, and I left to come here when I was 23. So I trained as a nurse in England, and I followed my mom's footsteps. So my mom's was a registered nurse, a children's nurse, in fact. And I started my training over there when I was 18, and pretty much been doing it up until 3 years ago. And predominantly, my experience has been in children's cancer nursing. So as long as I can remember, children have been the joy in my life. Even when I was a child, I wanted to look after children, and there I was in Perth, and they were looking for children's nurses to look after cancer patients. So that's my journey, and I'm very blessed as well to have 3 daughters of my own, ranging from 18, she's just off to TAFE now. I've got a 15-year-old Lucy, and then I was very, very blessed to have a baby at 45. So I've got a gorgeous little 8-year-old who I'm homeschooling at the moment, and feeling very, very, very blessed in my life. So yes, that's kind of my little story, really. I'm not nursing anymore. I stepped out of the arena a few years ago for a couple of reasons, but one of the reasons, and I think we'll probably talk to today, Taryn, is about my shift in the way I think about health. So, that's, what questions would you like me to answer, Taryn? Like, I will go on and on and on about this subject.
Well, you know, one of the things that really drew me to you was the fact that my son, when he was 3.5, was diagnosed with Wilms tumor. So this is a childhood kidney cancer.
Yeah.
And so we dropped everything and we raced down to Sydney, and we became involved in the pediatric oncology world. And, you know, there was not a huge amount of information because we didn't sort of have the internet that we have now.
Yeah.
But the nurse pulled me aside, and the pediatric oncology nurse, she was a dynamic, interesting, gorgeous, vibrant woman. And she pulled me aside and she said, I'm just going to let you know that 30 years ago, when my brother was diagnosed as a child with cancer, we were told back then not to allow the shampoo and the conditioner to drain from his head down onto his back. Your skin is your largest organ.
Wow.
And so I was hearing that from her. Now, my son was diagnosed, I think, in 2002. And so this is a long time ago. For her, 30 years before that would have been in the 70s. So there was information in the 70s about toxic chemicals in shampoos going over your skin, and yet the oncologist mentioned none of this.
Nothing.
No, he just basically said, give him whatever he wants, feed him whatever he'll eat. And there was really very little support for understanding how to, first of all, deplete my anxiety over my 3.5-year-old, not being able to support him sufficiently. And if something bad were to happen, we have a mother's guilt. And I then began my journey in trying to understand, how do we support little bodies that are growing so that this doesn't come back? And then afterwards, so in terms of that, you as a pediatric oncology nurse, you were in a position where you would have seen a lot of children going through similar experiences.
Oh, 100%. And, I've looked after the little Wilms, children, anything from sort of 0 I mean, I've actually looked after babies with conditions who I now know who are adults who are in their 30s, believe it or not. So, you know, it's from 0 up to 18. And, you know, when I hear you talking from your experience, Taryn, as a parent, what happens in hospitals, particularly in oncology settings, is the things that you mostly do for your children are taken away. And one of them is feeding your child, right? And so when our little children have the treatment and they get sick and they're nauseated and the chemotherapy and all that, we stop feeding them, right? Because they don't want to eat, and we give them tubes and we give them food down the tubes. And a parent's role has always been feed the child. And so a lot of that's taken away. And now I look back at the practice that I was in, we actually weren't feeding them very well. And what I've learned over the last 4 or 5 years with my interest in nutrigenomics was feeding the body the right things. It scares me that to this day, I know that the education is not there in the hospital settings. A lot of our children were on steroids. The highest treatment that we had was for leukemia. So 80% is the highest rate of childhood cancers is leukemia, and the children have steroids, and steroids, as most of you would know, cause appetite to increase. And they were on the food all the time. And instead of, somebody sitting down with the parents discussing what would be better for them to eat and so forth, to feed their body the right things, particularly while they're going through a diagnosis like they had, we were accepting them to go down to McDonald's. And the food that we had in the hospitals was all sugar related and not healthy foods. Like, we even, dare I say it, in the last 5 years that I worked, we didn't even have a bowl of fruit on the ward to give the children. And so it's really important that I now know that feeding the body the right things is so very important for their journey within treatment and healing, but also to prevent ourselves in the future of getting unwell and having diseases and and staying as well as we can.
So you spent about 30 years being an oncology nurse.
I did.
And so you haven't been in that field for the last 3 years. What is the difference for you in the way you see the world since discovering nutrigenomics, since working in that field and what you know now?
Yeah, look, massive. I think what led me into this journey, and I truly believe, Taryn, it came to me for a reason, because I was not open to looking at anything else but the traditional medical model. So you get sick, you come into a hospital, you go to a GP, they treat you and they send you on your way. They give you surgery, they give you drugs, or you don't get well and we go the other way. So I didn't really know any other way. And it was when I was introduced to this science and this ability for our bodies to actually be switched back on, in a sense. I didn't know that there's pathways in our body that get switched off. And when I understood that happened, and somebody in front of me, like, she told me, I'll be honest with you, and she didn't even really explain it. I didn't trust or believe. I wasn't in the mindset of that. And it wasn't till I saw her in front of me 3 months later, and she looked different. Her whole demeanor looked different. I actually asked her, have you taken Botox? Because I didn't even realize it was sort of like an anti-aging way, that it was going to help people look and feel younger. And so she actually said, you need to look at this. And I'll be honest, Taryn, I had achy joints at the time, and I was waiting to see a doctor, a specialist, and I was going down that gene pool of my mum. And I knew where that was heading me. So because she looked different, and because it had taken her pains away and lifted her mood massively, I snatched it off her, to be honest. And so that's where my journey began. And that night, as being a really inquisitive person, but also a nurse, I wanted to know what it was. So I did my research. I sat up all night and I read about all this, activating your body and nutrigenomics and NRF2 pathways, which all sounded double Dutch to me. And by the end of the night and reading all these differences in people's health, I was annoyed that nobody had told me about oxidative stress, and you would understand that, Taryn. So as a nurse, I think we think that we're fed all the information that we need to make people feel better. But when I heard of this thing called oxidative stress, which is, you know, free radical damage in our bodies, and we have a pathway that switches off that helps, you know, make that better. I'm like, why did nobody tell me about this, and why aren't we telling other people? And so from there on, that journey for me changed everything. Like, my path went very left. And because I started taking, you know, and activating this pathway and looking at the way I could help myself in my lifestyle, the choices that I was making, like you were saying earlier about toxins, and all the things in the world that can damage your body, I started to change. My health started to change. I started to feel better. I was more awake. My aches and pains went. And I have felt so passionately obliged to stand on a box and share it with the world. And that's kind of how my journey has progressed. And it got to the point, Taryn, where I couldn't actually then go to work and do what I was doing, because it didn't sit with me that I was not able to educate in the way that I needed to educate, because the medical model didn't want to look at it. The medical model weren't interested in it. All they were interested in was treating. Now, I need to make everybody really clear here. I'm not somebody that's saying, I don't go to hospital, I don't believe in drugs and treatment, because that's not the truth. But I do know now that there is a different way to keep our bodies in balance. I'm a true believer that the body in balance is the miracle, not any product, not any, you know, any magic wand, but keeping our bodies in balance. And one of the ways we can do that is with nutrigenomics and looking at the way we live and these pathways in our body. So yeah, it's very different for me now, Taryn. You know, when I talk to somebody about their health, I actually ask questions. You know, I want to know, what are they doing, you know, and not just about feeding their bodies food, but, you know, chemicals, your friendships, your state of mind, your anxiety, you know, all these things are linked to balancing that body. So the journey has been so wonderful for me, because I see people's health change now, and even my mum and dad. So when my parents were they were obviously living in England, and they're still there, but they were on holiday with me here. My mum and dad saw the change in me, and my mum was sleeping in a chair with her aches, and I said, I need to pay for this for you. I want to help you and to feel better too. And so we activated their bodies, and their health changed. Now, what doesn't give you more pleasure than watching your parents' health change? And so that's the journey I've been on, Taryn. I'm doing this sort of education, I like to call it. For me, it's about making sure people know that this is a thing, and that we can help our bodies. So I don't nurse anymore, and it's been a joy. I had a great career. I've loved looking after all those children, but you can imagine it takes its toll. I was night shift worker. I didn't actually realize I was tired till I stopped being tired, if that makes sense. So when I activated my body to switch these pathways back on, I started to realize that I was tired and burnt out. And I said, this is enough is enough. And I couldn't sit in that model of nursing anymore. And, you know, I closed one door and I've opened another massive one. So for me, it was absolutely brought to me for a reason, and I'm very, very grateful.
You know, Katie, as you were speaking, I'm just getting I call them truth bumps, not goosebumps,
Yeah.
but I'm just getting waves of truth bumps just washing over me. And, you know, part of this process is that when you discover something that is your absolute truth, and you're coming from a heart space, and you know the benefits that abound by tapping into what is basically 5 herbs,
Yeah.
you can't sit back and say nothing to people. Like, I feel that I try and make pacts with myself sometime, because when I discover something, I go and blab everything to the whole world. And so I say to myself, Taryn, the whole world hasn't asked for your opinion. Wait till people ask for your opinion before you tell it to them. And, you know, I was really have been trying to practice that. However, I have found that since I've started taking this, that I can't help myself again.
Yeah.
Speaking, like my words fall out of my mouth before I can shovel them back in. I went to a girlfriend's book launch last week, and I arrived there a little bit late, and I walked in, and I had noticed, like, over the last couple of conversations where I've bumped into people like, oh my God, what are you doing? Your eyes are all sparkling.
Yeah.
And what are you eating? And I thought that, you know, you imagine people are just using a conversation starter, or they're trying to be polite, or they're just trying to engage with you. So I was quite dismissive about it and would just carry on talking normally. But on Thursday night, when I was at the book launch and I was chatting to people, and they're like, no, you are radiating,
Yeah.
and your skin is so beautiful. And I'm just like, you know what? I can't stop talking about this product.
No.
Because the effects for me, I went on it for one reason, but the effects were in other areas of my life. And what I did notice this week, I was reading an article about people developing certain types of cancer, and it was actually related to low glutathione levels.
Yes.
So that really, because after I finished chemo, that is what I used, IV glutathione, to kind of detox the body and to get things back into motion. But those who have low glutathione run into all sorts of problems. And the benefit behind taking these 5 herbs is that it stimulates the body to produce its own glutathione.
Taryn, for me, like I often say to people, I'm mad about glutathione now, because, you know, every single person who has cancer has low glutathione. I mean, there it is. And you can imagine my passion around cancer after seeing what I've seen and dealt with what I've dealt with. That's very close to my heart. And when I read that, and I heard it from a consultant to say, yeah, well, glutathione's low in everybody with cancer, I'm like, but do you not realize that I actually take 5 herbs and they switch on my glutathione, and I make my own glutathione? I don't have to take glutathione, and it's upregulated by 300%. What more do people need to know? Like that in a sense is, what are you waiting for, everyone? Like, and even if you don't even feel any better on it, because everybody's different, right? Some people have great benefits, some people feel it, some people don't have any benefits, but then when they come off taking these herbs, they go, oh my gosh. But even if they don't, guess what? You're making your own glutathione. I say to people, I've probably got 300% more glutathione than you are. Do you want me to talk to you about glutathione? And they go, what is that? And I'm like, oh, right, where do we start? It doesn't, you know, that in its simple sense is so important. And look at the world we're living in right now. They are talking about glutathione so much, about being this master anti-regulator for immune systems and staying well and keeping whatever's around at bay. They're looking at glutathione, and I'm like, but I make my own. Like, isn't it better to activate your body rather than supplement? I mean, supplementation has its place, does it not? You know, if you're low in things, and vitamin D is really good at the moment, and the zincs and all the vitamin C's, but a lot of it ends up in the toilet like a Berocca. When the beauty of nutrigenomics is switching on our bodies to make their own. So we upregulate and we downregulate. We have a dimmer switch that comes up and down. And so it's such a magical thing, because we can never have too much. We can never have not enough, because it regulates. And that's the beauty of those supplements we've got in those herbs.
And I get all excited.
I know, look at me.
Like I think I'm actually breaking out in a sweat because I'm like, I know. And I'm so passionate about saying to people, why can't we do proactive healthcare as opposed to reactive, where you do chemo? Like, if we get in early, why don't we just you know, we stop the problem from happening. Now, you mentioned then about the glutathione, and I just thought I need to talk about with you and ask you, like, there's a difference between exogenous and endogenous glutathione, like when you're taking it as a pill in your body, or whether you are creating it. They're not built evenly. Yeah,
it's very different. One of the things that glutathione has been used for years and years and years is Parkinson's, and athletes, actually. So athletes have been scrambling to get glutathione for best performance. it's almost impossible to take a tablet of glutathione and it work very well. If it does work, it's like daily. You have to keep taking it daily. So with the Parkinson's patients, we used to give it intravenously, because intravenously, I don't know if you've ever seen some of those videos of when you give it somebody with Parkinson's, they're stuttering and stammering along, and then they give them intravenous, and then they start walking normally and chatting, and it's like you want to cry because it's like a miracle. But of course, 2 weeks later, they have to go back in and have it IV again. And so that's the difference between giving somebody glutathione and making their own glutathione. It's like a whole game changer, and that's why it's like at the forefront of being proactive. Like you say, like if we can be proactive with our health instead of reactive, how much better? Like what I always say is, you know, do you want to stay well? How long do you want to stay well? Do we have to, as we age, accept our health declines? No. We used to. How many people on this call would say, oh, well, yeah, I'm getting on now. I've got an ache and a pain. I expect to get something. I'll go to the doctor. Yeah, he's going to put on the We actually just accept that that's life. Hello. We don't have to accept that. Like if I showed you, Taryn, photos of me, and I will, I'll put them in this group for you, the before and after, I was actually horrified. I'm like, look at the difference in me since I've been looking after my body and activating myself. I look younger than I did then. And I'm off medication, by the way. So, you know, we're not here to treat any diseases, anyone. But what we find is that when we activate our bodies to do what they're supposed to do, then things start to happen in our bodies that are better for us. And so some of the medications, I was on a medication since I was 17 with a illness that was brought down to me from generation. I thought, and this is the other thing really important for people to understand, that just because you're born with a bad gene from your mum or your dad, and I've got one from each side, and I bet you everybody on this call has too, you do not have to accept that that gene stays with you. You can actually stamp on it by activate your body. So I had two of them, one from each, and both of them I've down-regulated. One I came off a tablet, and the other one, I don't have any aches and pains in my joints anymore. So, you know, that's the miracle of activating your body and staying your best version, the way you look, because we all want to look great, don't we? But it's inside out, outside in. You know, look at Taryn's face. Look how glowing you are. You look at my face. Am I glowing? Like, people just see that when you activate, there is a difference in our bodies. And, you know, even those athletes, you know, they perform better, they recover better. Do you know, everybody, it's great to exercise, but you can over-exercise because that actually causes this damage in your body. And so, you know, there's a lot of athletes that are just, they get on well as they age, actually earlier than us, because they've got a lot of this free radical damage. They need to get that down in their bodies. And that's what we can do with nutrigenomics. So it's, you know, it's for everybody. Everybody needs to be activating their body to stay well. I actually call it food. So when I take my herbs in the morning, I just think it's food. And people say to me, I don't like taking tablets. I said, do you eat breakfast? Do you eat food? Like, to me, it's just feeding your body, and I will do that forever. Like, it's a non-negotiable for me. That
Katie, I think you know, I don't like to take tablets, and I am terrible at being compliant. And so, you know, I like to test the parameters of everything to see how far I could stretch something. And so, you know, of course, you know, you take it and you're feeling absolutely amazing. Like for me, within 3 weeks, I had reduced brain fog, and I could see patterns and relationships. So it meant I could sort my mess out in my house, which I'm a naturally really messy person, but I could never get on top of it because my headspace was a bit screwed. And so then you start to feel, and then that becomes my new normal. So then I'm thinking, this stuff isn't doing anything for me.
Correct.
And so I kind of thought, oh, well, Rhonda had said, okay, well, you know, you can, after you stop taking it, within 2 weeks, you return to old things, old levels of oxidative stress. And so I'm like, oh, well, that means I can have a 2-week break. And maybe I could get extra value out of my money.
Yeah.
I spend it, I'm like 2 weeks. Like, this is how I'm thinking. And, you know, and I just sort of, after a while, I forget to take it, and I'm walking around the house. I'm like, I can't get on top of my life. I don't feel like socializing. I'm getting irritable. Mess is piling up. I can't see patterns. And I'm like, what did I forget to do?
Oh my gosh, I'm diligent, and I'm not a diligent person, everyone. Let me tell you.
I've become diligent.
But when it comes to taking those little tablets in the morning that are feeding my body, I just will not. Have a think about this, everyone. In 2 weeks, you go back to normal, and people go, "That's terrible." That's because of the damage in the world. That's because of all the pollution, all the diet, all the stress. You know what? Our bodies are under attack every single day, whether we like it or not, whether we can control the toxins that come into our world or not. We cannot control what we're breathing. We cannot sometimes control the people around us that cause us stress and anxiety. So in 2 weeks, we're back down to normal, and it's shocking. It's a shock. And like the brain fog, I'll tell you, when I first started, I wasn't expecting that. I was just thinking about my joints, right? I read all those stories, and I'm like, I don't think I've got brain fog. Oh my goodness. I ended up waking up like from a deep sleep. I ended up in another job as well. So not only did I look after children with cancer, I joined a chemo at home job. So they drive around. I thought, what a great job would that be, going into people's homes, in their own environment, so they don't have to come to hospital, and helping them. And I love people, as you can probably tell. I love to go and have a cup of tea with people and have a chat. I didn't do adult nursing. It was a big trial for me to go out of my comfort zone at the age of 46 and say, will you take me on? And they took me on. And it was because I believe that I was brave enough, because my brain had woken up. I felt different. I'm like, I could take on the world, man. And so I ended up, doing 2 jobs. But I'll tell you, just while we're thinking about it, that even cemented me even more about what I was doing, because I was going into people's homes and I was giving chemotherapy for lots of illnesses, but also inflammatory illnesses as well. Things like, osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, all sorts of things that needed some infliximabs and some treatments, right? I know that if they'd actually looked at, what was causing this oxidation and inflammation in their bodies, they might prevent themselves from having to have those sorts of treatments. But I wasn't able to talk about that, Taryn. I wasn't allowed to talk about what I knew that they could do in their lives to help themselves. So it frustrated me so much that I quit the lot. I said, I can't go to work every day and not speak my truth about what I think can help from here. And, that's the journey. So, yeah, it's I'm like you. I sometimes try and rail it in, because, not everybody's ready to hear about it, right? I stop people in Bunnings that are walking going, I think I might be able to help you. You've got something going on there. Let's have a chat. Because we naturally want to help people feel better. I have ever since I've been a child. It was just, I don't know whether it was my mum or it was just born into me, but I've always wanted to help people feel better. And when I see somebody suffering and I think, there might be something I can teach you about today that might help you feel better. And we can't shut up about it, and neither should we. Neither should we, because it might change somebody's life right here on this call right now to say, you know what, I'm actually going to activate my body. I'm going to give this a go. What have you got to lose?
As a result of not being able to keep quiet, my girlfriend who's in skin cancer medicine and cosmetic medicine, I told her about it and sent her the PubMed articles, and she was just blown away. She's like, Taryn, how do you come across these amazing things? So she's been using it, wants to tell her patients all about it.
Right.
She's using it on her dog, who Roxy is like 14 years old and she's blind.
Yeah.
And yet when she uses it on the dog is able to see like she can see things and she's not bumping into things. It's incredible.
Wow.
But then my friends actually ordered it. Her mum had been unwell last year and basically was bedroom bound. It's like a townhouse and she's upstairs and hasn't come downstairs since November last year. She was on the product for 5 days and she said to my girlfriend, she said, I actually think I'm bored now of staying in this place. I think I'm going to move around.
There it is.
And you just can't make up some of these stories.
No.
And so, people are affected in different ways, and upregulating the genes, the good genes, and downregulating the bad genes really switches on a new kind of game that you start to play, and it raises the bar to a new normal.
And that's exactly what it is, raising the bar to a new normal. And, that could look different for everybody. I've got a lady that came into my life from another, team person in my team. And it still gives me those bumps about how it's changed her life. She was a 58-year-old, couldn't get in a wheelchair really, and horrifically unwell with so many different things. And she started to take some of our products, and she reached out because she needed a thyroid out. And she said, I'm going in next week to have my thyroid out. Now, look, I'm not somebody that knows too much about, I'm not an expert on thyroid, but I do know that if we can get, on top of our oxidative stress and our free radical damage and help our mitochondria and all those things, and look at gut health and what are we putting in our bodies, then maybe we could prevent her getting her thyroid out. And so I actually put her in front of a friend of mine who's very much into nutrigenomics. And she cancelled that operation, Taryn, overnight. She did everything, and it wasn't just about taking these products. It was actually getting the toxins out of her life, out of her shelves, out of her cupboards, getting her off gluten, all these other hacks that we can do, grounding herself every day. She didn't have a thyroid out. Her thyroid went back to normal. And today she walks around. She's got a full-time job in an NDIS position. She's lost, I think it's 66 kilos. Yeah. And so when you have people in front of you like that, now look, that's like the extreme version. And that's great because we watch that. But do you know what? If somebody sleeps better, and that's the only thing that this product helps them with, and guess what? Like, it helps a lot of people with sleep. I know sleep is one of the most important things, everyone. If we do not sleep, we do not heal. I was a naughty night nurse who was very noisy, let me tell you. And even the doors used to slam. But you know what? The kids in hospital needed to sleep to rest, to repair what's going on in their bodies. And how many people, even I bet on this call, I bet a few of them go, I don't sleep very well, particularly right now because of the stress and anxiety that we're going through in our life if we don't sleep well. So we have people that just go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how well I sleep. I feel better. That's good enough, isn't it? That's good enough.
Oh, yeah. So, Katie, can I just steer the conversation just to ask a question or two in relation, because I deal with a lot of breast cancer ladies as well. If women are doing chemo, can they take this while they're doing chemo?
Yeah, look, absolutely. And I am in touch with one of the people in the business who's actually she's on the medical advisory board, and she has been taking these products since she found them, and she had breast cancer, and she was treated with normal radiation and chemotherapy, but she then was introduced to the products and she became a lifetime user of them. And so I speak to Nancy a lot for advice, because I don't want to give people the wrong advice, right? Particularly as a professional oncology nurse, and people trust me. I wanted to make sure that I was doing the right thing. And so Nancy, I'm very in touch with her, and absolutely, like when people are on chemotherapy, radiation treatment, whatever that looks like, and mentally how stressed you are, you're building up oxidative stress in a blink of an eye from all of those things. And while you're on the treatment, it's absolutely a great thing to take all of our products, to be honest, to really give your bodies the best support that it can. Now, the only advice I would say is that on the days that you have treatment, so if you have like a day of chemo or you're on radiation, you need to just stop for that time and then restart as soon as you've finished. Because as soon as you've finished, your oxidative stress is right up there, because it's killing off all your good cells as well as your bad cells. And we want to regenerate those cells as quickly as we can to make you start feeling better and getting over the illness and the disease and also the side effects. So 100%, just give yourself a day off while you're having treatment and hop straight back on them as soon as you can.
That's sage advice. So that's really useful. And so, when people are doing surgery, is it, do they stop the day of their surgery as
Yeah,
well? They can,
generally, I mean, some people don't bother, but we advise because one of the ingredients is turmeric, and for some people, turmeric can cause a little bit of bleeding, and so we have to be super careful. So I would always say, like 24, 48 hours, I'd say 2 days before surgery, stop the product, and then when you get out of hospital, restart. It only has to be a day or two after as well. 2 days either side is enough for you to not run into any problems.
so when you say bleeding, what that does is turmeric it thins the blood.
Thins the
And
blood,
so,
basically. Yeah, and
and so
not everyone. Like, it's just one of those things. Everybody's different, but it's one of the good things that it does. But obviously, when you're in surgery, you don't want to have an issue. So we just safeguard people. We don't want that to happen. So that's our advice.
And I mean, I think people get told to stop taking fish oils as well just before
Yeah,
surgery,
exactly. Same
because it has
thing.
the same effect
Same
on the
effect.
blood.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, well, this has all just been very marvelous, and I love the fact that conversation just flows so easily with you, and you are so generous with your information that you provide. It makes it an absolute, honour to be able to sit here and to talk to you. What I might do at this point in time, because I noticed that someone had to leave, if any ladies have any questions, do you want to just pop it in the chat? And we can sort of, Katie might be able to, answer a few questions.
Sure.
And else, if there's no questions coming, I'll still keep asking lots of questions because I'm ever curious. Karen Scarf just said she loved it. Kerry said she really loved your integrity, Katie. So,
That's beautiful.
that's a beautiful value. And I can't hear anything. I don't hear anything. Okay. Oh, sorry, that was an earlier one. Okay. So,
And look, I want everybody to understand as well, like, I'm always around. If you want a conversation with me about anything, I'm happy to get on a call. I'm happy to advise you. I'm happy to talk about anything because it's helping people is what I want to do. It doesn't matter about who, where you sit in whose business or whatever is. I'm here to offer any help that I can, whichever way that looks, Taryn. So, I'm in your groups now, I think, and reach out. Anybody reach out and ask a question if you need any advice.
And that's one of my top values is generosity. And when I meet someone who's equally generous, it's like, whoa, we're building an empire with generous, people with that as a top value. So thank you for that offer. So just going back to the products that we're speaking about, like the NRF2, it has the 5 ingredients. Katie, I did read an article about there has been a synthetic form of making this NRF2. And the difference between, so the one that's been made, he took 40 years to come up with this absolutely perfect synergistic ratio and blend of these 5 ingredients, which have then been patented.
Yeah.
And, but, there is a synthetic form. And when you have the plant-based form, which Katie said is like food, it opens up that pathway for 20 minutes where it upregulates the good genes, downregulates the bad genes. The synthetic form that is produced by a pharmaceutical company that is copying the natural form with the patent on it, that pathway, from what I understand, just stays open 24/7.
Stays open. And you don't want that, Taryn. You don't actually want that. So when you dig a bit deeper into the science of NRF2 and activation, and look, you're putting something synthetic in. So when you're putting something synthetic in, it's going to affect you differently. And it's actually not healthy to keep the pathway on all the time because that can actually run into bigger problems. And I don't want to talk about that too much, but there is a lot of evidence to suggest that that can happen. So if you think about like any drugs, there's a side effect attached to most of them. And look, when the doctors and the scientists, Dr. Joe McCord, looked at these products all those years ago, he was a chemist, a scientist. He actually went to the drugs. He went to them first, but because, and a lot of them activated that pathway, but a lot of them caused a lot of harm in the side effects. And I know as an oncology nurse, and you would know, Taryn, you get sick, what do? You add a anti-nausea tablet in. Then you have gastritis because you anti-nausea tablet, and then we'll add an omeprazole in, which will give you that. Then you're taking away the hydrochloric acid out of your stomach, and then what, like your gut health's bad. So it's like a domino effect. Why would you want to take something that wasn't natural if you didn't have to? I mean, they want to jump on this, don't they? Like, I get it. I know the farmers will want to replicate what we've got. But honestly, why would you if you didn't want to?
Well, I think inside our bodies are geared to have receptors to plants. And I talk about the value of plant frequency, the value of sound frequency. It's all naturally occurring for our body and ourselves. So, and it was really interesting because when I spoke to Margie a couple of weeks ago, and we spoke more about lymphedema and lymphatic health, it was really interesting because she then said, people with lymphatic, like lymphedema, instead of just taking it once a day, she actually gets her patients to take it 3 times a day. And, so I know that I can do that 3 times a day, knowing that pathway stays open for 20 minutes and then it closes.
Closes again.
It behaves like food.
Yes.
And by taking a different dose for a specific reason, I'm now having outstanding results. So that was just a little side. So Penny, I will send you more information about the products. So if anyone wants to know a little bit more, if you drop a 1 in the comments in the chat box, we will send you more information about the products and how to get them. And if you're if you're curious and you want to know, Penny's keen.
Hey, we've got a Wendy who's a nurse. Hi, Wendy. Yay. And that's exactly right. So a nurse of 30 years and have become disillusioned about reactive healthcare. Do you know what? I think the more and more people are becoming awake. And, the beauty of it is you just hop on a call like this and you start to learn. Do you know, I learned just sidetracking about breast cancer. I was on there's a doctor online. He does a lot of work with health, particularly MTHFR gene. Taryn, I don't know if you know the MTHFR. Dan Mercer.
I have the motherfucker gene.
Yeah, the motherfucker gene. So do I, and so does my daughter. So I'm very aware of it. But so I watch his stuff online. He's an amazing guy, and he was talking about natural progesterone yesterday. And he works for Young Living, actually. He makes the products for Young Living, and some of their essential oils he puts in progesterone. He's got an oil that's a progesterone oil. But anyway, what really startled me is he said that if you're on the pill under the age of 18, you have a 500% higher risk of getting breast cancer. I rest my case, Your Honor. Like when you're looking at drugs that we're putting in people's bodies, and look at that from such an early age, what that can do later on in your life is catastrophic. And are we thinking about that when I've got an 18-year-old daughter who has been on the pill since she was 14 because she had bad skin and the doctor thought it on whatever, and bad periods, and that's what she went on. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So every day I'm learning something new about what we should be doing and what is going to be better for us. Here's Rhonda. Rhonda's just hopped on. What else have we got? Who else is chatting to us?
So it was just Karen's interested in more information, as is Penny. So I'll get Christine to make sure that we get the names down so that we don't miss out on passing information. Katie, I guess, I've got another friend who's an ex-oncology nurse, and she became so disillusioned with how what people were doing and putting into their bodies and the long-term ramifications of the chemotherapy. Now, I did chemotherapy. And so, when I was, I did the genomic testing beforehand, even though the oncologist didn't want to give it to me. The oncologist made the assumption and made the decision that I couldn't afford the genomic testing. And when I prodded further, she basically said, well, you might not do chemo if you do the genomic testing because you'll have some science to back for the reasons not doing it. And that really kind of didn't sit very well with me because they wanted to just do this cookie cutter approach. So I was quite demanding on doing that. And I did the genomic testing. And while I looked at my risk, I thought I had no risk for future recurrence. It did come back with a future recurrence in a much higher category than I could possibly have ever anticipated. And I think that's the problem with having the MTFHR gene, is it does put you into the risk factor. It put me into the risk factor for fibromyalgia, which I had. It's all sorts of other things. But what that genomic testing did was it actually said, those first lot of chemotherapy agents that she offered me and the duration and the timing would never have worked. So,
and had you not had the testing, you'd have just gone on and done it. And at what expense to the rest for your body for the rest? And look, some of the treatments can cause other cancers. So, I've seen along the way children come back having one cancer and then coming back and having another because of the treatment that they had, because it's a side effect. Let's be honest.
Yeah, actually, we sat in the oncologist's office and, when she read the stats, about, all sorts of things, my beloved actually read the stats back to her in his reframe and his understanding of ratios and statistics.
Yeah.
And he said, so do you mean to say that you need to treat 87 women with this chemotherapy protocol in order to save one extra woman's life?
Yeah, that's predominantly what they do.
38 seconds later, she sat there in silence. 38 seconds later, she answered with a very quiet, dull yes. And so, I think that, if we can start getting in early and we can start working with, like you said, low glutathione levels are the precursor to cancers, particularly breast cancer. So get in there and start doing the proactive care. You can start sort of working with the genes and getting the genes to, the good genes to do their work and the bad genes to, step out.
There's never a bad time. So, you've got your youngies that go, well, I'm too young, I don't need to. Well, that's the best time. If you can keep that pathway switched on and you never switch it off, then you're going to stand a better chance. But, then I've heard people say, oh, it's too late for me. I'm 60, 70 now. I'm like, no, this is like a great time for you to start really being proactive right now. Reduce that inflammation, that chronic inflammation, that oxidative stress, start to feel better, start to look better, and hopefully keep stuff away from your door. That's what we want.
I get my house feng shuied every year, and I get my husband's and my astrology chart done with the Chinese astrology. And so this year in particular, he's sitting at high risk for poor health. And so, he's turning 62 this year, and, he's happily taking the NRF2 as, being proactive. He's very fit. He's, you can't imagine him having poor health. But, it feels good for me to know that that gives me a lot of confidence to say, it's one way of improving your man luck,
Yeah, so true.
Yeah.
I mean, I think about my dad, Taryn. So he has got stents. So he had a heart attack when he was 56, so quite young. And he had stents in, and we activated him. His best thing was he didn't get hangovers, so that was his winning thing. But he did feel a lot better. But when he actually went and he's had these stents in, he's like 70s now. He went to have his stents checked and he went for another angiogram. And they actually had seen a marker in his bloods that they thought he'd need a triple bypass. So we all went into this kind of panic about Dad needing a triple bypass, and did I need to go over and all this? And they went in and they had a look, and they came out and said, we don't understand. Your stents are clear after all these years, and you have no coronary artery disease. And, you can say what you like, but we know that the studies have been done previously with cardiologists to show that, the furring around the arteries on the patients that had these products, this NRF2 activator, they didn't have the furring. And so, that alone has saved my dad. Like, his stents are clear after all those years. And I honestly believe that some of that is to do with us activating his body, switching on that pathway and keeping his oxidative stress down. And they will never stop taking it, either of my parents. So it's a joy.
Yeah, and I know that was probably one of my drawbacks of thinking, I don't want to start something that I'm beholden to taking for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Like that brings up a big, boom gate for me. But, my attitude now is that I wake up in the morning and I'm excited to reach for it, because the two little brown capsules, they're like energy on steroids for me.
Yeah.
Like, they give back to me the energy that I felt I was lacking and missing. Like, I never felt like I ever got my flame back after chemo. I feel like there's a dimmer on it the whole time. My energy is just suppressed and depressed, really.
Depressed, that's right.
Yeah. And so I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I can't wait to take those little brown pills.
No, it become addictive, don't they?
Yeah, because so I'm like, isn't that a mind switch going from, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, to waking up and going, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I mean,
But it also leads me to talk about the two of them together as well. So when I was introduced to all this, there was only the one product. We didn't even have another one. And I was quite happy with NRF2. I'm like, woof, I found this. Happy days. I'm going to teach about oxidative stress for the rest of my life. And then they added in this mitochondria. And I'm like, well, I know what a mitochondria is because I'm a nurse and I've done a bit of biology in my life. I didn't know about how our bodies decline in mitochondria. I didn't know that we could make our own. So the two together, everyone, like the salt and pepper on the table, aren't they, Taryn? And each one of them helps the other one work better. So when we added the NRF1 in, it was like another light bulb. I'll tell you now, I felt like I put a new pair of glasses on.
And, I was chasing, I was, doing some biohacking, and I was chasing ways to increase ATP production with my mitochondria.
Okay. Yeah.
So I've got my red light therapy happening. I was taking this, and I didn't know that it could be turned on so quickly.
On again. Yeah, so quickly.
Yeah. So in terms of taking it, like, I take it first thing in the morning, the brown ones on an empty stomach. Yeah. And then 20 minutes later, I take the yellow one with a bit of good fat. So I do Bulletproof Coffee, which has the MCT oil for my brain health. So can you add anything to that regime?
Oh, look, that's a great way to do it. I shove them all in my mouth all at once because I'm a busy mum of 3 rushing around. And if I don't do them all at once, I tend to forget. But, that's the best way to do it. But, let's the other things that I would always now go for is your omegas and gut health. Like, again, as a nurse, that frustrated me that nobody had talked to me about gut health being your second brain and serotonin being made in your stomach. And is there any surprise that 1 in 3 people now are prescribed an antidepressant because they've got leaky gut, because they've not got any good bacteria, because we're living in a world of bad bacteria and there's no balance? And so I'm like, oh my God, this I've just gone into overdrive of education on a totally different level after 30 years of nursing. So of course we need a good bacteria. Of course we need a probiotic. So I take the NRF1, the NRF2, I take a NAD as well. I take the prebiotic and an omega, and boom, out the door.
So the interesting thing about that probiotic is that, a lot of people sort of say, when you take your probiotic, it doesn't make its way all the way through that really long alimentary canal. But this has got an incredible technology where it's encapsulated with this technology that means that it can...
Very different.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, like the stomach acid, you take a tablet, if it only hits the stomach and dissolves and goes nowhere else, you're going to kill off a lot of that good bacteria. So this one goes all the way down into the large intestine. It doesn't actually dissolve after 54 minutes, is it now? Something like that. And so we know that it's down there. I feel like it's like a little farmer throwing it all over my gut. So I'm getting that healthy. And again, like, you think you can't get any better, and then you add a probiotic in, And then you go, oh, wow, look what that's doing for me. It's another biohack, really.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it's remarkable, and you get in where you fit in. But that as you start to really see your health change, you know that it's just feeding your body the right things, and affordability becomes, well, we'll stop doing something else. Look at what else you're doing and paying for in your life, that you can now afford to take these products that are going to serve you so well today, tomorrow, and the rest of your life. Because I personally will never stop taking them.
You know, Katie, you've brought up an interesting topic of affordability, because at first I looked at it and I'm like, shit, man, I'm not going to be paying that much money for the rest of my life. You know, because another top value of mine is freedom. So that felt like a bit of a felt. But when I sat down and actually calculated, like certainly in the NRF2 with the 5 herbs that are in that, I was buying each month a bottle of Silymarum, a bottle of ashwagandha, a bottle of curcumin. And so those 3 bottles, not, you know, like they were adding up, and I didn't have the same outcome.
No,
the 5 ingredients separately, all at once. And, you know, and then I was chatting to, I think Rhonda, and she was talking about some herbalists having a look, and you can come in on this one if you want, Rhonda, if you want to chat. I'll just make sure that, you can unmute yourself. The herbalist looked at the ingredients and said, oh, look, those amounts aren't big enough to really make an impact.
I've heard that a lot,
Yet, when you combine them in that perfect ideal ratio that he took 40 years to figure out, you have an outstanding outcome.
Oh, to me, it's like the cheapest product for what it actually does. Now, it's like, oh, well, it's like a blink, like it's a cheap product for what it actually does. And we can go back to people over supplementing. People will over supplement with turmeric because they're just peeing it out into the toilet.
It's wasteful.
For that. It's wasteful. It's very wasteful and can be harmful, by the way. So, certain products can put people in liver failure if they take too much of them. And so we have to be really careful of not over supplementing. So affordability. I mean, yes, I'm with you, Taryn. I remember thinking, oh gosh, that was just the one product. Now it's just part of my life, and I have changed things in my life that, like I don't drink alcohol anymore. I just stopped drinking, and that wasn't about affordability. It was actually like, well, I'm looking at all the things in my life that I don't need and are actually probably harming me. So I'm going to stop that right now. And I haven't drank now for 18 months. Look at the money I've saved not drinking. So, there's lots of things we can do in our lives to be able to afford and justify. I guess a lot of people feel they have to justify, and I get that. Like it is, everybody has a budget, but like I said earlier, you get in when you fit in. Get in at on the NRF2 just as a minimum, and build your way up.
Certainly, if you can't afford to take the combination, or you can't afford to also do probiotics and omega, you will get such an outstanding response with the NRF2 so quickly that I would just sort of say to just go and jump in and do that one. But I know you can take the NRF2 without having to have the NRF1, but I also understand that you can't have the NRF1 without the NRF2.
Well, that is a theory, yes. But I do know that people that do take NRF1 without the NRF2. So, but the company do educate and advise us that it's better if we're on both of them. Yeah. So, we start off with NRF2 and build our way up. But some people, like I've had people jump straight in on the lot and have never looked back. They go, what have you got? What do I need? Here we are. I'm going to budget myself to have that for the rest of my life. And
I know that I was slow to the take, but I had people telling me about this product for 5 years, Katie. And I was so resistant to being told what to do. My personality type is that I like to discover everything for myself. But the negative part of that is that I don't get onto things
You
fast
miss
enough.
out.
I do. And then I've got this regret going, imagine
Yes,
if I actually
FOMO.
listened.
Yeah,
And how much better the last 5 years would have been. Instead of me spending,
correct.
like when I was doing IV glutathione, it's not cheap, people. And no one in Townsville does the IV. So I'd order it from a compounding
Oh my
pharmacy down
gosh.
south. It would then get shipped up here. My husband would have to sit the drip up in the lounge room for me and put the IV in. I'm needle phobic, so there was a bit of tears. It was messy, it was complicated, it was difficult. He was rolling his eyes because he's like, oh, what are we doing now? So this is just such a simple way of impacting and having a positive outcome for your future. And it's really quick and easy. But I've just realized we've been talking for so long, Katie.
I know. I told you, I did warn you, didn't I? I warned you that I would go on and on.
Oh, no, this is just, I'm an information junkie. And so this fills my heart and my soul to be able to talk about something I'm really passionate about. You've been incredibly generous with your time and your energy. So there are a few comments in here. I'll just read the last one from Karen. She said, thank you. This has been amazing. I need to leave for another meeting, but she's really looking forward and she's really grateful to the information and how honestly we've shared it. So that is a top value of mine, being authentic and speaking my truth and coming from a place to serve people so that they can have their best outcomes in this life.
I love you, Karen. I love you. Honestly, you share all my values. You've got the bubble, like I feel like you're the bubble girl too. And sharing a screen with you has been an absolute delight. So thank you so much for today. I've really enjoyed it.
Thank you, gorgeous Katie. And for people who came in late,
yes, thank you, everyone.
We'll send the recording out later. And it will include the beginning part if you want to catch up on anything. If you're wanting a little bit of more information, drop a 1 in the comments. We'll make sure that we get some information out to you this afternoon. And have a wonderful rest of your week. Have a thrilling Tuesday. And we'll catch you again for another candid conversation in a week or two with another guest. Thank you, my darling Katie Jane.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.